Hey there, welcome to the 21 Clear podcast. I'm your host, Adam Hatcher, the founder of 21 Clear, a family business consulting firm. And in this podcast and all of them, we want to give you time to think about your inner family business, the unique way your family works in and owns the company that you all have together, and help you take one more step on your chaos-proof journey. Today, I am excited to share the first of two parts of what was an incredibly fun and insightful conversation with Norm Smallwood. Norm is the co-founder of RBL, Results-Based Leadership Group. RBL is a thought leader and a consulting firm specializing in strategic and human resources consulting, helping you understand your talent and company strategy so that you can get the most from both, have a great career, and build a great company. I know Norm because RBL was referred to me by a large, privately held, Georgia-based family company when I was looking to restructure our business to take it to the next level. Norm has been an instrumental part of my career, of our family company's journey, and has worked with family companies that are privately and publicly held, and those public ones are still controlled by families, but publicly owned. So he has spanned from mid-sized to large to publicly owned family or family-based companies, but he's also worked with publicly and privately held companies that weren't family controlled. So what I enjoy in this interview is Norm's experience both understands the unique dynamics of a family company, but can see it in that broader conditional business world that we know doesn't care if you're family owned or not. It's just what can you do in the marketplace for your customers. In this episode, Norm shares something I wish I had either known on day one of my career in the family company or the first day I became the vice president of human resources. It's the 4 stages of leadership. If you have ever had that concern, am I seen as a high performer? Can I be seen as a high performer? Or the family members that I'm responsible for leading or supervising, are they high performers? Or is this organization I have with people that I've known for a long time that care about me and my family, are they up for what is next for this company? That's a concern all of us carry, and it's a critical part. Understanding that is a critical part of building a great company while you keep your family together. Norm has a simple but deep way of thinking about it that I found helpful, and many other family companies have as well. It's the 4 stages of leadership. This was a long conversation between the two of us. So this is part 1. Norm and I in this, he's going to introduce the 4 stages of leadership and then spend time on the first 3. That's episode 1. And we will take a break. Then in episode 2, we will pick up with the 4th stage of leadership and then take some time and talk about the consequences of understanding and applying this idea, these 4 stages, the consequences for you personally and for your organization, both its health, job satisfaction for your employees, and ultimately the value of the business. So stage 1, 2, and 3 are in the first episode. Stage 4 and some time thinking about application inside your business in episode 2. Enjoy this first part. I have really both enjoyed the conversation and listening back to it with Norm. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. And with that, here's Norm Smallwood. Well, Norm Smallwood, welcome to the 21 Clear podcast. What a privilege.
Great to be here, Adam. Looking forward to the conversation.
Norm, when I introed this episode, I told people you and I have a history. You and I got introduced by a large privately held Georgia family company when I got to the point in scaling our family's business that we'd done a few acquisitions, and it just felt too hard to run, and it felt like we needed a new understanding of leadership, and that's how we got introduced. So as we're going through this, I want the listeners to know it's not just that I've read your books and looked at the material you've produced. You and I have actually worked together, and I have seen your ability to look into an organization and its leadership So thank you for that. And again, excited to be here today.
Yeah, me too. And you've got a gift for doing the same thing that you just credited me for. So it's fun to be here and talk about it.
Well, I hope everybody enjoys this mutual admiration.
Yeah. And you're younger, handsomer, and thinner than me too.
That's thankfully no one can see that. I guess unless you're watching on YouTube.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'll just tell them it's true.
Norm, there's a concept when we were working together you introduced me and our company to, and it's something that you've written about and studied, that I think every family leader, or even if you've just started in your family company, you should understand. You have this framework of 4 stages of leadership. But if people think this is just an intellectual exercise, I actually, having lived the family business, believe that this 4 stages that you explain that we're going to talk through answers 2 fundamental fears that every family leader has to face at some point. The first fear is, what do I actually need to do to be seen by non-family members as a strong performer? Or maybe even, was I ever a strong performer? Am I one? That's a fear we have that I think your 4 stages gives a practical framework for. But then also, a lot of times families go decades without a good way to assess family members, and it ends up costing the business and they can't see it till later. And I think your stages actually help people see it before it happens. So with that, the 4 stages of leadership. So this is something you've written and you've talked about. And the question that I've seen you frame it with is, what do I need to do to be seen as a strong performer? So can you talk about how the 4 stages, then we'll go through each one, but just in general, like how does it touch that question?
Yeah. Well, my first partners were in a consulting firm I had before we started the RBL Group named Gene Dalton and Paul Thompson. Okay. And Gene and Paul were professors at the Harvard Business School, and they were looking at engineering obsolescence. And the idea of engineering obsolescence was that if you hired an engineer, a few years later, the question was, should you fire that engineer and hire a new one because the skills that engineer brought with him or her had now become obsolete, and you needed somebody with more recent skills. And so when they looked at that, originally at RCA was the original company that they studied, they found that that if you looked at the subject through the lens of age, that at about age 39, on aggregate, engineering performance declined. But that if you looked at it at an individual base, like if you were to do a scatter plot of engineers, you would find that some engineers became more highly valued over time as they got older than others. So their question became, what differentiates the high performers, those who become more highly valued as they get older, than the aggregate who became less valued as their performance was seen to objectively decline? And so with that question, they looked at a number of variables. They looked at the number of hours worked. And actually, there is a slight correlation, but not much, right? It's not really a statistically valid comparison. It looked at level of education, bachelor's degree, master's degree, PhD. No correlation to performance. Number of patents, no correlation to performance. So what did become clear is that expectations change, and that so the longer you've been in your job, there are, like if you're doing the same work at age 35 that you did at age 25, people began to ask what's wrong. So what became clear to them is that there were what they called stages of performance, and that some people's were able to change the nature of their contribution and stop doing what made them successful at one stage and begin to take on a new set of knowledge, skills, expectations, or perspectives that met the demands of expectation over time. And that's what became known as the 4 stages of performance.
So it's the people who began to perform different functions as time went on versus doing I've heard the phrase used in non-family and family companies. She didn't work here for 30 years. She did the same 1 year,
Exactly.
30 times. This is people who did different things. So then what stage, let's walk through them. What
Sure.
is, and I think it's fascinating as we go through this, you can't necessarily just work really hard and move stages.
Yes.
Like you could work really hard and do year 1 30 times.
Yes. That's exactly the dilemma. So what happens, you enter the workforce, let's say in your early 20s, you've got a degree, an undergraduate or a graduate degree of some kind. This I said it started with engineers, but it's been over time, it's been expanded to every type of knowledge worker in virtually every industry. But so when you enter the workforce, you tend to be psychologically dependent on others. You need direction. You need to learn how things work around here, the culture of the organization, and you need to pay attention to details. And if you can do that, people think you're a high performer with plenty of potential. The problem is that over a couple of years, for most jobs, even the most technical jobs, you have to move from that dependent contributor where you're reliant on others for direction to become an expert or an individual contributor. And so what made you successful in this first stage as a dependent contributor was that you were looking for others to tell you what to do. You were looking for assurance that you were on the right track, and so on. Now, let me throw out a piece of information that became really interesting, is that the average age in like a Fortune 1000 company for somebody doing that kind of work is 38. So it's not, the expectation would be that would be a good performer at 22, but when people are describing you that way at 35 or 40, that's not good anymore, right? Because you haven't made the shift from dependence to independence. So that's the first one, right? From 1 to 2. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, and I've seen you use the word, like, stage 1 is like apprenticeship. And it reminds me, it doesn't have to be a privately held, publicly held, family held company. I remember I went to law school and then was a prosecutor, assistant district attorney. And I didn't have these words back then, but I remember the DA saying to me, he said, year 1, you're going to mess up every single day. That's why you have a team lead. You will make a mistake every single day. And it's going to take you 3 years to actually begin to contribute back independently to this. For your first 2 years, my expectation is you are learning the ropes, you are building trust, you're going to be closely supervised. And it really is not going to be, so I guess he was saying you are stage 1. And I think where you were going is stage 2 was when he told me, the next step is me beginning to trust you independently in the responsibilities of a prosecutor. So is that stage 2 is beginning to contribute independently?
Absolutely. So the shift psychologically is from being dependent on the team leader DA to I'm an individual contributor. I'm a lawyer who knows how things work around here. I'm considered an expert. You can rely on me to do the job right. One of the characteristics of individual contributors is that competence becomes their way of comparing themselves with other people. So they're always, how do I compare to you? I mean, if we're both prosecutors, I start to spend a lot of my time comparing my successes to your successes, or my school that I went to the school that you went to, right? So it's very competitive as an individual contributor. And so let me make the beginning of the shift. You can stay as an individual contributor for your entire career and be considered a valuable resource to the business, the organization. But it's harder to stay there because your technical discipline, usually, that was the engineering obsolescence question that wasn't quite right, but your discipline changes, so your success is dependent on your ability to keep up with the changes in your area as a lawyer, as a banker, as a human resources person. Whatever your technical discipline is, you've got to keep up with that. The average age, I did the average age in the dependent contributor. As an independent contributor, the average age is exactly the same. It's about 38. So what we're going to find here as we go through these, this isn't an age-related thing, right? So, which is really funny because a lot of organizations have time and seniority systems set up for compensation. So they're not contribution models. They tend to be time and position. Like we want somebody who's been here for 10 years or 15 years or whatever. And it turns out that that's not a good basis time and job is not a good basis because as you started out with, I could be doing the same job over and over again and not really learning and changing. So the next shift is from independence. You don't have to make this shift, but some people do, is the shift to stage 3 from stage 2, from independence to influence.
And before we make that shift,
yep.
So in stage 2, that contributing independently, and I think when you start in your family company, sometimes you're just thrown to the wolves. But many times someone's given a mentor, a supervisor, it might be a relative or not. And there is this, particularly if you're the younger generation, there tends to be this desire of, I want to be trusted independently. And but that stage 2, I've seen you write that there are 4 requirements, just to highlight them for people. So you do have a technical expertise. This isn't chief waiting for mom to retire officer or vice president of lots of opinions. There's a specific thing. It's being an engineer. It's being a sales professional. It's being a project manager. There's the ability to operate autonomously. I mean, it doesn't mean you don't have a boss, but it's like back when I was a prosecutor, I went to court and nobody was over my shoulder. That's what you wanted. You demonstrate initiative. You don't just wait to be told, which in family companies can be hard. Your family system can teach you growing up. Mom will always tell me when to take the trash out, but now that I work with mom, I can't wait for that. Like, I need to show initiative. But then the last one, you have the requirement when you're there in stage 2, a willingness to accept accountability. And I find it, like, if you're managing family employees, I guess, Norm, maybe the reason that the average age is the same, like if you are managing a stage 2, so someone with technical expertise, who's autonomous, who demonstrates initiative, but is their manager, you're their leader, you never shift the accountability for them. You never change what's expected of them. That could be one way they end up just staying in stage 2 for a really long time.
Yeah, no, I think you've nailed it. It's and I think some people enjoy that. It's kind of a stage at which you can be kind of a know-it-all in your area of expertise, right? Nobody knows more than me about engineering, about sales, about whatever. And so again, your accountability in stage 2, you define your accountability as being accountable for being the best expert in this narrow area that there could be. So, and what we'll see is issues like accountability and initiative change, right? Because you could be doing the same job, but depending on what stage you're in, you would be doing those different assignments differently.
Well, and this is going to come back in stage 3, but I'll just put a pin in it here. I do believe, and it's, any of us can be successful in a family company in stage 2. The challenge I heard you give was you have to be an expert in something, and it's not an expert relative to your other family members. It's not an expertise relative to the other people in your business. It's actually an expertise against your peers outside the business. If when I was the general counsel of the company, or let's say the head of corporate strategy, it wasn't was that I the best strategic planner in our company. Compare me against our competitors. How did I hold up to them, or even to some of the thought leaders in strategic planning?
No, that's right. And if you think about professional associations, like I remember years ago when Gene Dalton and Paul Thompson were together at Innovations, we did a project with the IEEE, and the IEEE is an association of electrical engineers. And we looked at their career model, and their career model was, they had stage 1 right, which was, to be learning, be an apprentice. And then stage 2 was, to become an expert in electrical engineering. And then they didn't really call it stage. Then they said the next career level was to be an even bigger expert, so that you were kind of a super expert. And then you could become an even super, like a world-renowned super expert. And they just kind of missed the logic of, if you looked at it through the stages lens, it's really about contribution to the business and maybe to the field, which isn't to be better and better in a very narrow area.
So let's take that and move to, because you called it super expert, but stage 3, I've heard you say you go from stage 1, apprenticeship, stage 2, contributing independently, stage 3, contributing through others.
Yeah.
Explain that.
So you're an expert, you're a super expert, doesn't matter, right? But then you begin to broaden out and to look across technical areas, because, so let's say I'm in sales, I need to begin to think about, well, what about manufacturing? What about our strategy? What about the engagement of the people? But we begin to take a broader perspective in stage 3 that allows me to consider not just myself and to optimize me. It's really, how do I optimize the team or the function or the area that I'm a part of? And I can only do that by looking across, not just within my own technical expertise. So stage 3 people turn out to be really, really important. Even we're going to go to stage 4, which is, it seems like it's even more senior. But stage 3 people are where everything happens. You think about a family business or virtually any business, it's that influencer, the person who can make things happen. It's the person who knows how the company works, has the right network, and can, in hockey, a metaphor, can stick handle through the bureaucracy and sort of land things, whether it's a project, a new product, it becomes the critical role. And the funny thing about being in these stages is to move from stage 2 to stage 3, somebody doesn't need to promote you. You can just start based on your understanding of how things work in your company. You can sort of self-promote, right? You can start doing things differently. And you don't need a promotion. You should get compensation and so on that is commensurate with the contribution, but you might not, right? And it's certainly not in the traditional way of time and grade.
I'm guessing people hearing you talk about stage 3 are thinking the key sign, the key indicator of moving to that stage and contributing through others is that now you're leading a team. And when we hear stage 3, depending on the size of our company, we think it's a team of 3 or a team of 15 or a team of 50 or 100. For the introverts listening to this, Norm, I think you just answered this, but I want to call it out explicitly. Do you have to contribute through others, do you have to also lead a team?
No. As a matter of fact, that's why I said to lead a team formally, somebody needs to promote you and assign you a role to be the leader of the team, like I'm a manager. But you could also be a coach, a mentor, an idea leader, which are sort of more on the technical side, not a people leader, but your influence is felt, not necessarily in an assigned. It could be. You could be a coach or a manager, or not a coach. You could be a manager or a team leader in an assigned way. But it doesn't have to work that way. And one of the things that you hear in the shift from individual contributor to idea leader, mentor, coach, is that sometimes people will promote the best expert to become the formal leader of the team. And when that happens, the person who isn't really in stage 3 gets the role, the formal role. It's easy to say, we lost a good engineer and got a crappy supervisor, because remember we said that the nature of people in stage 2 is to be very competitive, micromanager. So in every way imaginable, if you're not in stage 3, if you're not like this broad technical perspective, care about others, a developer, an integrator, a synthesizer, an influencer, if you're not that, then it's really hard to scale the company. So if you were talking about family business, one of the biggest problems is if you have a family member who's a stage 2 expert, they're put in the head of something, whether the whole business or a team or a function, and then they're really competitive and micromanaging. You can't grow the business because that person cares about the whatever their area is, the financial side, too much about the product side, only about them. It's not an integrated view. And very quickly, employees don't feel valued or developed. The customer experience, you have to have a stage 3 person to get the customer experience, because those are the people that care about making sure that the employee and the customer have the right experience. Everything happens, for your business, critical to be in that stage 3 role. And the challenge is some people just don't like doing that. They want to be experts. So
it's a big shift hearing you talk about it. Mentally or professionally, or maybe even from a humility perspective. In stage 2, I was working with a family recently, and we were exploring this concept of being for each other. I'm going to build trust with you. by showing you I am for you and for your good and for this company's good, not just out for my own interests. But in stage 2, that competitive part, there's a little bit where you've been given guide rails and you can kind of be like, you're probably in an area you like and you get good at it and you want to beat other people and be competitive. And that's that conditional nature of business. You've got to be good and be getting better. Stage 3, it feels like you actually are starting to leave that and you have to prove to people, I'm not just for me and being good at what I do. I'm for you. I'm managing this project because I want you and the customers to be successful, not me. I'm mentoring you, not because I want to be seen as a great mentor, because I want you to develop. I'm not an idea leader like a chief complaining officer that you're not doing a good enough job. I'm trying to help create organizational ideas or structures for the business and for you to be successful. And actually, you stage 2s are going to get more of the credit because you're going to be doing the work and contributing. It feels like a really big and maybe even difficult shift from the comfort of, I proved I'm good, to now I have to make others good, clients, company, employees.
It's not about me anymore. It's about the success of us. So yeah, so let's go through the shifts again. The shift from what you have to be great at in one is dependence. You have to be willing to rely on others to show you the ropes, and you have to listen and learn. Then you have to stop doing that. You have to stop doing that, and then you become this independent contributor. You have to be somebody who's an expert, who's self-reliant, who's competitive. Then you have to stop doing that to get to 3, and you have to sort of shift from, it's about really increasing my expertise in this narrower area to caring about the integration. So from individual expertise to integration, to synthesis, to influence, to coaching, to developing. It's about from me in 1 and 2 to us in 3. They're huge psychological shifts. That's why they're hard, right? And the term novation, because you're a lawyer, I will say this, is actually a legal term. And the term means a renegotiation of an expectation with concerned parties. So every time you make a career shift, you have to renegotiate your role in the organization because the expectations, not that you have, but that others have of you, are what you've been doing, right? So everybody expects you to be an expert, and now you're interested in the broader issues.
One of the hardest things in a family company is where you get this sense that you drift between roles. And you could actually be drifting from 1 to 2 to 3 as far as expectations without ever this moment of reinvention. I hadn't thought about that till you said it. The importance of declaring a reinvention when you're working with your family is it lets you reset expectations. Last week, a friend of mine was promoted from lieutenant colonel to colonel. And I went to the ceremony and I watched one of his sons read the orders, and the other son took his pen and replaced it with a colonel pen. And it was a distinct reinvention of his role.
Symbolic. It's very symbolic, right? And I love the idea of the symbolism of saying, I've changed ranks, and there's an expectation that I can't do things exactly the same way that I did them before. I have to do things differently, right? I'm expected to do differently. The problem is when people are expected to do differently, but then they really are unable to do it because that's not really what their predisposition is. And then there's that gap, right?
Well, and my guess is to that, in the first 2 stages, the average age was 38 or 39. I'm guessing the average age of stage 3 is also 38 or 39?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's It is not age related. It is there's two things that people think these stages are related to, because it's standard practice to think that it's either age, older people have, a different set of perspectives, or it's position. So, I remember the first time early on, we started with Gene and Paul, we would do these, look at expectation in senior leadership groups. I remember the first time a CEO said, gee, I'm in stage 2, and the senior leadership team around him was saying, we know, right? He was a finance guy, and everything that they did had to go through all of these hurdles that were self-imposed. And he was, this company, I won't say the name of it, but this company has continued to grow partially because he took himself out of the CEO role and hired somebody to do that role that really was able to do it better than he was. It just didn't match his interests or perspectives. But he'd grown a $1 billion company as a stage 2 guy. But it didn't make it easy.
And that is, I remember I was actually playing golf at an event, and we were walking the round, and so it gives you a lot of time to talk. And I was walking with a guy that was late in his career, second generation CEO of a family company, had successfully onboarded generation 3. And he had that moment, Norm, that I've heard so many times, but this was the first time I heard someone say it. He said, Adam, I kind of always wondered if I'm as good as my title, and if I could have achieved this responsibility outside of my family company. And underneath, I didn't have those words back then, but underneath it, what he was saying was, I have the title commensurate with a stage 4, but am I a stage 2 in reality? And could I have gotten to this title somewhere else? And what you've just touched on, I think it's this fear that for every family leader I've ever met, we all wonder the same thing, particularly if you haven't worked outside the company or worked outside the company much. Could I have done this somewhere else? So then stage 4.
By the way, the comment for me on that one would be, it's very easy in a family company. It happens because you've got the right last name. In a growth company, it happens because you're available. So it can happen. You don't have to be in a family company to find yourself in a role which doesn't match, where the incumbent in the role doesn't have the expected knowledge, skills, and perspectives. That happens all the time. We see that. So I understand why it would be a concern, because maybe it was, the gift of family that I got here. But every time we do these, we do these, what we call them, the pipeline audits, we see the same thing going on, because somebody's available when the company's growing, so they get put in that role, and it creates all kinds of problems.
So from a negative family business perspective, it can happen because of nepotism, but the same thing can happen in non-family companies. Availability is what you've seen. I think from a positive family business perspective with negative consequences, sometimes it happens because you've got someone who can buy the company. But listening to you, just because you can finance the company, just because you have a certain degree, just because you work a certain amount of hours or are a certain age, doesn't necessarily mean you're stage 2, 3, 4. Just like being available doesn't mean it.
Exactly.
So that is stages 1, 2, and 3 from our conversation. In the next episode, we're going to pick up stage 4 and then apply it, or talk about some practical applications for you personally, for your family, and for your organization. I hope that you've got some ideas running through your head after this episode. Every episode we record, our goal is to give you things that will let you sit and think about your inner family business, that unique way you work in and own your company together, and take some of these concepts and apply them to it. A couple things in the show notes I want to share with you. There's a link to RBL's website where you can get in touch with Norm, and you can also get in touch with other members of his team. Second, there are a couple of books that Norm has done that I really like, and I've linked to one of them called The Leadership Code in the show notes. There's even an assessment in it that when I took it, made me ask some pretty tough questions about myself and my stages, but it ultimately helped me in my career. So those two things are in the show notes, and I hope those resources are helpful to you. Look for the next episode where we finish the conversation with Norm Smallwood. My best to you in your inner family business and its health and journey. And as my grandfather would have said, thank you so very, very much for listening.